In the world of combat sports, there are matchups that live forever in the hearts and minds of fans. But what if you could witness an encounter between two legends, each from different worlds, with raw intensity and unforgettable power on the line? Picture this, a clash of styles, a battle between ferocity and resilience, and two warriors whose names carry a weight of history. In one corner, you have Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, a man whose punches are as feared as his unpredictable personality. His legend is built on brutal knockouts, a fierce demeanor, and a reputation that has echoed through boxing gyms worldwide. In the other corner stands Larry The Ax Hennig, a name synonymous with sheer strength, toughness, and resilience. As a figure in the world of professional wrestling, Hennig carved a reputation for himself as a force to be reckoned with. His ability to take punishment, combined with his raw power, made him a powerhouse in the ring. But what happens when two forces of nature like Tyson and Hennig meet with the world watching? Will Tyson's explosive fists be enough to break through Hennig's formidable defenses? Or will the X show the world that wrestling strength isn't something to be underestimated? As we dive into this thrilling hypothetical showdown, we find ourselves asking, could a boxer like Tyson hold his ground against the raw power and grappling expertise of a man like Larry Hennig? Could the well-honed techniques of the ring be enough to neutralize Tyson's overwhelming speed and knockout ability? Tyson's career is filled with mind-boggling achievements, including his legendary reign as the undisputed heavyweight champion, and a reputation for leaving opponents gasping for air after just a few seconds in the ring. But Larry Hennig wasn't just another wrestler, he was a competitor who could take on any challenge, standing tall with a career spanning decades. His legacy isn't just about what he could do, but how long he could endure in the face of overwhelming odds. The tension builds as we explore how each fighter came to embody what they are known for. Tyson's story is one of meteoric rise and turbulent fall, a fighter whose speed, power, and savagery earned him comparisons to some of the greatest warriors in history. His career was marked by unforgettable moments, and his legacy continues to shape boxing today. But in the world of wrestling, there's a different kind of strength, the kind of power built not just on physicality, but on endurance, grit, and tactical brilliance. Larry Hennig's approach to combat was less about quick strikes and more about outlasting the opponent, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash his devastating moves. The question now is, which style reigns supreme in a head-to-head matchup between these two titans? Would Tyson's explosiveness overcome the sheer fortitude of the Axe? Could Hennig's wrestling mastery trap Tyson in a way that no boxer could ever imagine? Fans of Tyson might argue that there's no way a wrestler like Hennig could withstand his brutal onslaught, while Hennig's supporters might point out that boxing, while impressive, may not be enough to counter the raw power and grappling expertise that comes with decades of wrestling experience. These two men, two legends from two different worlds, would they clash with the earth-shattering intensity we can only imagine, or would one rise above the other to secure victory in a way we'd never expect? As we delve deeper into the intricacies of their fighting styles, the battle begins to take shape. But even as we break down the tactics, techniques, and physical attributes that define each fighter, one thing remains clear. This isn't just about who can land the hardest punch or who can take the most punishment. It's about strategy, resilience, and the heart of a true competitor. Tyson's ferocious speed and power are unquestionable, but could Hennig's legendary resilience and grit in the wrestling ring hold up against the intensity of a man who has made a career of knocking people out before they even have a chance to blink? The clock is ticking, and as both fighters prepare for the ultimate battle, one thing is certain: the world may never see a matchup quite like this again. As the story of Tyson and Hennig unfolds, we find ourselves looking back at the journey that brought each man to the precipice of greatness. Mike Tyson's rise from the gritty streets of Brooklyn to the world stage was nothing short of extraordinary. Born in 1966, Tyson was a product of his environment, faced with adversity, poverty, and a tumultuous upbringing. But instead of breaking him, it fueled a fire that would define his boxing career. Under the guidance of Q's Yamato, Tyson transformed into a ferocious fighter, his ferocity unmatched in the ring. His early career was marked by an unstoppable streak of knockouts, each more brutal than the last. But behind the scenes, Tyson was struggling with his own demons. Fame, fortune, and the pressure of being the youngest heavyweight champion in history took a toll. His mental health, a battle hidden from the public eye, would soon become a subplot that added a layer of mystery to his persona. As much as Tyson's fists spoke for him in the ring, it was his unpredictable behavior outside that made him as controversial as he was legendary. Then, there's Larry Hennig, a different kind of fighter altogether. Born in 1936 in Minnesota, Hennig's path to prominence didn't come with the same flashy spotlight as Tyson's, but it was no less remarkable. A professional wrestler known for his incredible strength, Hennig's moniker, The Ax, was earned not just for his raw power, but for his ability to outlast and overpower opponents with a combination of brute force and technical skill. As a member of the famous Hennig family, Larry's legacy in wrestling was already cemented by the time he stepped into the ring. His most iconic moments came in tag team wrestling, where his ability to absorb punishment and deliver devastating blows was legendary. But there was a quiet intensity to Hennig that few outside the wrestling community truly understood. He wasn't just a powerhouse, he was a master of endurance, a strategist who knew when to bide his time and when to strike. And while Tyson's world was about speed and power, Hennig's was about control and resilience. The two worlds were so different, yet somehow they intersected in this imagined battle. Tyson's quick, devastating punches were calculated for maximum destruction, each hit a potential knockout. He had trained his body to move like lightning, and his mentality was that of a predator, always hunting, always looking for the finish. He often found himself surrounded by controversy, whether it was his volatile personality or his run-ins with the law. But when Tyson entered the ring, none of that mattered. The focus was always on the fight, on his ability to dismantle his opponent with a combination of speed, aggression, and that trademark fearsome stare that sent chills down the spine of anyone who dared challenge him. Hennig, on the other hand, didn't just rely on brute strength, he relied on experience and mental toughness. His wrestling career spanned decades, and while Tyson's career skyrocketed in the limelight, Hennig was a quieter force, someone whose value was often overshadowed by the flashy personalities around him. His true strength lay in his ability to survive the most brutal of conditions. Hennig's battles weren't just against his opponents, they were also against time, as wrestling evolved into something far different from what he had started with. But what he never lost was his desire to prove himself, his capacity to endure, to fight through pain, and to show that wrestling wasn't just about scripted moves or storylines. It was about heart, grit, and the fight for survival. As the speculation grows about a potential showdown, the world begins to imagine what might happen if these two worlds collided. On one side, there's Tyson, a boxer who was known for cutting down opponents before they could even get their bearings. On the other, there's Hennig, a wrestler whose focus on survival could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Could Tyson knock Hennig out before he had a chance to implement his strategy? Would Hennig's grappling expertise give him an edge, allowing him to take the fight to the ground where Tyson's speed would be neutralized? Each man's weaknesses began to emerge as the speculation deepened. Tyson, while explosive, was often criticized for struggling against opponents who could last beyond the early rounds. His mental resilience, once a strength, would often falter when the fight went beyond the expected. The question remained, could Hennig, with his relentless endurance, drag the fight into uncharted waters for Tyson? And in the corner of Hennig's world, there was the question of his age. By the time the two would theoretically meet, Hennig was no longer in his prime, with the toll of years in the ring taking its inevitable effect. Could his experience still outweigh Tyson's relentless speed, or was time simply too much for him to overcome? Meanwhile, Tyson's own demons added another layer of complexity. What happens when a fighter is just as much at war with himself as with his opponent? Tyson had often faced battles outside the ring, public breakdowns, the fall from grace, the infamous prison stint. His inner turmoil threatened to overshadow his genius in the ring, but those who knew Tyson would say that in moments of deep struggle, he could find strength in the chaos. Was that enough to carry him through the fight, or would his unpredictable nature lead to his own downfall? Behind the scenes, agents, trainers, and fans began to take sides, each with their own predictions and analyses. Some believed that Tyson's sheer power would overwhelm Hennig's technical prowess, while others felt that Hennig's iron will and experience in long, drawn-out battles would give him the upper hand. The media circus surrounding the fight continued to build, fueling the fire for a showdown that seemed impossible to ignore. The world would have to wait for the inevitable clash. But as the anticipation grows, one thing becomes clear. Regardless of who comes out on top, this fight would be remembered, not just for the physicality, but for the deeper story beneath the surface. It would be a story of two legends each at the peak of their own world, but each carrying a different kind of weight. The stage is set, the fighters prepared, and the world is watching. But as the bell rings, who will truly rise to the occasion? The anticipation surrounding the Tyson vs. Hennig fight continued to build, and soon the hype reached a fever pitch. Fans flooded social media with predictions. Analysts dissected every possible outcome, and both men's camps prepared in secret, working tirelessly to perfect their strategies. But there was a twist. No one could have anticipated an unexpected factor that began to alter the course of the fight before it even began. Just days before the event, a shocking announcement sent ripples through the combat sports world. Mike Tyson, the face of boxing's dominance, had been struggling with severe injuries to his back, a condition he'd kept hidden from the public. The media buzzed with rumors, some even speculating that Tyson might be forced to withdraw from the fight altogether. This revelation sent shockwaves through the boxing community, as many questioned whether Tyson's body could hold up under the pressure of a fight like this. But Tyson, ever the fighter, insisted on pressing forward, his pride refusing to let him back down from what was about to be the biggest showdown of his career. Meanwhile, on the other side, Larry Hennig faced a different kind of pressure. Despite his years of experience, his age had started to take its toll. The years in the wrestling ring, the countless bumps and bruises, were now visible in his joints and movements. But Hennig wasn't one to shy away from adversity. He'd always been the underdog in his career, fighting against bigger, younger opponents who sought to prove they were the next big thing. But this time, it was different. The wrestling community had rallied behind him, offering support, sending well wishes, and even urging him to reconsider facing a legend like Tyson in his current state. But Hennig remained resolute, his desire to show the world that wrestling was just as legitimate and powerful as boxing, pushing him forward. As the clock ticked down to the night of the fight, an eerie calm settled over the arena. The crowd buzzed with excitement, but there was a sense of tension in the air, as if everyone knew that this wasn't just any fight. This was a battle for pride, for legacy, and for respect. As the fighters made their entrances, Tyson's body language told a story of determination, but also something deeper, something almost desperate. His movements were slower than usual, his eyes betraying the weight of the injuries he'd been hiding. Tyson had always been a man who relied on his speed and power, but tonight, it was unclear whether either of those assets would be available to him. Hennig, for his part, looked as composed as ever, his face a mask of confidence. But beneath the surface, there was a flicker of doubt. Was he truly ready to face Tyson in a fight that could push him to the absolute limit? The first round began, and it quickly became evident that Tyson wasn't the same fighter he had once been. His punches still carried power, but they lacked the lightning-fast precision that had once made him an unstoppable force. Hennig, though slower, seemed to have the edge in terms of stamina. He moved with calculated purpose, his wrestling background giving him a unique sense of positioning that allowed him to withstand Tyson's initial flurry of blows. The crowd was on edge, unsure of what would happen next. Tyson, visibly frustrated, tried to find his rhythm, but Hennig's defense was solid, absorbing the hits without faltering. Just when it seemed like Tyson was beginning to lose steam, an unexpected twist unfolded, one that would change the course of the fight in a way no one had anticipated. In the middle of the second round, Hennig suddenly reached for his back, wincing in pain. The crowd went silent as Hennig dropped to a knee, clutching his side. The referee rushed over, the medical team scrambled to the ring, and for a moment, it seemed like the fight might come to a premature halt. Was Hennig injured? Was it his back, his leg, or something else entirely? The uncertainty added another layer of suspense, with the audience on the edge of their seats, unable to tear their eyes away from the unfolding drama. After what felt like an eternity, Hennig stood up, waving off the medical team and insisting he was fine. The injury, it seemed, wasn't as serious as it appeared, but the brief scare had given Tyson a glimpse of vulnerability. Tyson, now sensing an opening, unleashed a flurry of punches, trying to capitalize on the momentary weakness. But just as Tyson moved in, Hennig surprised everyone. He stepped forward and caught Tyson in an unexpected move. With a swift motion, Hennig, using his wrestling expertise, locked Tyson in a hold that no one saw coming. Tyson struggled, his face contorting in pain as Hennig's grip tightened. The unexpected shift in momentum left Tyson scrambling for an escape, his speed and power momentarily neutralized by the sheer control of Hennig's grasp. The audience gasped. This was not what they had expected. Tyson, once the predator, now found himself trapped by a wrestler who wasn't backing down. The question on everyone's mind was clear. Could Tyson break free, or would Hennig's experience in controlling opponents in tight situations give him the upper hand? Tyson's body language told the story. He was struggling, his every move weighed down by the nagging injuries that had plagued him for weeks. And yet, there was still that fire, that hunger that Tyson had always been known for. He wasn't going to go down without a fight. But as the hold tightened, and as the seconds ticked by, the suspense became unbearable. And then, just when it seemed like Tyson might find a way out, the arena lights flickered. A low hum resonated throughout the stadium, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. The crowd's murmurs turned to whispers, and then the lights went out completely. The arena was plunged into darkness. A hush fell over the crowd, and for what seemed like an eternity, there was only silence. What had happened? Was it a technical glitch? Or was there something more at play here? With the lights out, the only thing visible was the outline of the two fighters, locked in the battle of their lives, their fates hanging in the balance. The interruption added another layer of uncertainty. Would Tyson be able to find his way back, or had Hennig's hold shattered the legend once and for all? The fight, now in chaos, had become more than just a spectacle. It was a test of will, a battle for legacy. And as the lights flickered back on, the true question remained: who would emerge victorious from the depths of the darkness? As the lights flickered back on, the world seemed to hold its breath. The arena was alive with energy once again, but there was an eerie stillness in the air. Tyson and Hennig, now visible under the bright lights, were locked in an intense struggle. Hennig still had Tyson in his grip, and the boxer, visibly strained, was fighting with everything he had left. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, unsure of what would happen next, as if time had suspended itself in the chaos. Tyson, despite his aching body and nagging injuries, found a burst of energy, the instinct of a champion kicking in. With a powerful twist, he managed to break free from Hennig's hold, pushing himself up with sheer force, his muscles screaming in protest. The crowd erupted in cheers, their admiration for Tyson's resilience palpable. But Hennig, the seasoned veteran, wasn't done. He immediately closed the gap between them, shifting tactics and driving Tyson back into the ropes. The fight had turned into a war of attrition, each man pushing himself beyond his limits, with neither willing to give up. Tyson's usual speed had slowed, but his power was still formidable. Hennig, on the other hand, leaned into his wrestling expertise, using every bit of his strength and knowledge to keep Tyson off balance. Then came the unexpected. Just as Tyson was beginning to find his rhythm again, his body giving out under the pressure, Hennig did something no one expected. Instead of continuing to overpower Tyson, he released him and stepped back. Tyson, breathless and confused, staggered forward, trying to regain his footing. The crowd held its collective breath, unsure of what was happening. Was Hennig surrendering? Had he finally run out of steam? But then, in the most unexpected twist of all, Hennig raised his hand to Tyson. A gesture of respect. The audience gasped, unsure if this was a trick, a last-ditch effort to throw Tyson off balance. But it wasn't. Hennig spoke, his voice low but clear. I've fought every kind of fighter there is, but you, Mike, you're a different breed. The arena was silent. What followed was a moment of clarity for both men, one that had eluded them throughout their careers. They weren't just fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for mutual respect. In a world of egos and rivalries, this moment of sportsmanship was rare, and it struck a chord with everyone who witnessed it. Tyson, caught off guard, took a step back. His eyes, filled with exhaustion and pain, met Hennig's. For a brief moment, Tyson's fierce demeanor softened. It was as if the weight of everything he'd been through, the losses, the struggles, the public humiliation, the fight against his own demons, finally gave way to a deeper understanding. He nodded slowly, his chest heaving with the effort to breathe, and extended his own hand. The crowd erupted in applause, not for a knockout, not for a victory, but for something far more meaningful, an acknowledgement that the true essence of fighting wasn't about destroying the other, but about mutual recognition of what it took to reach that stage. But just as the tension began to ease, another surprise unfolded. Tyson, ever unpredictable, reached out and grabbed Hennig's hand, pulling him into a sudden, intense embrace. In that brief, unexpected gesture, Tyson whispered something to Hennig that no one could hear. The camera zoomed in, capturing the fleeting moment, and the crowd remained frozen in place, unsure of how to process what had just occurred. This wasn't just a fight. It was a symbolic passing of the torch, a recognition that, in the end, the battle wasn't just about who could knock out who, but who could stand tall in the face of adversity, who could weather the storm and continue to fight. And then, the final twist came. As the two fighters stepped back, the arena's atmosphere shifted again, this time with a new energy. Tyson and Hennig, standing side by side, turned to face the crowd. But in that moment, as the lights began to dim and the crowd's applause continued to swell, it wasn't just Tyson or Hennig who stole the show. It was the idea that both of them, despite coming from different worlds, had something much larger in common than anyone had ever realized. Their journeys, their battles, their personal triumphs and struggles, they were all part of the same human experience. The final bell rang, marking the end of the fight. But the real victory was not measured in punches or holds. The real victory was the newfound respect between two men who had fought their own battles, both in and outside the ring. It was a fight that left a lasting impression on everyone who watched, not because of the bloodshed or the power displayed, but because of the profound realization that even in the most brutal of conflicts, respect and humanity could emerge.